So how to think about character ensembles and how to make character webs. Let's see if I can shed any light into that. So maybe I'll change the title here. Other storytelling tools sounds a bit. And that's that. Okay, so let's start with different kinds of character combinations. Like, of course, the smallest combination would be a pair. So where we have typically maybe a hero or a protagonist and their ally or best friend or helper, could be like an animal even, and then it could be like the hero and their foil. So what's a foil character? A foil is like in Finnish it's folio, so it's something that reflects. So it's like a mirror, but not a mirror that reflects completely. So I like to have things that are like concrete. So just a minute and I'll get some actual foil. Okay, so I didn't have any kitchen foil. Well, but I'm guessing that you all know what kitchen foil is. So it's a character that mirrors the main character in some ways. It could be a dark mirror, or it could be a bright mirror. It could be a skewed mirror. And the mirror character doesn't have to be just a mirror. They can have their own goals in life. Just like there was the two characters, Peppermint Patsy and Marcy. Marcy has her own things in life that she cares about. Okay, let's go to TV tropes and see what they have to say. I mean, you have probably also read TV tropes at some point of your lives. It's easy to get stuck there also. So let's see, foil. What does it say? Romantic foil, berserk foil. Okay, so you can see that there are many kinds of foils. Okay, there's the first one, foil. Okay, there's Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, which is a quite old story example from the 1500s or 1600s? So sidekicks often serve as the hero's foil, it says here as well. So they need to be seen together. Sometimes they are depicted as physical contrasts to the main character. It could be also that the antagonist is the foil of the protagonist. So it doesn't have to be the sidekick necessarily. And so I think the foil and the mirror character are quite close to each other, so that's why I'm putting them in one basket. But this puts them into actual mirrors not required. Okay, and it says here also that these often overlap, and the foil and the mirror can be the same character. So there's also something like the evil counterpart. So that's one kind of a pair, that you have a character and their foil. Can you think of any examples or in stories that you know where there are two characters and one acts as the other's foil? Okay, so let's go further. Then there's something called buddies. So that you typically have two characters that are like doing adventures together. They might be foils to each other or not, and they might be of same gender or not, but they still are just buddies. So two good friends going on an adventure together. So a typical road trip theme. Or you have many cop shows or detective shows where you have two detectives, two policemen who are typically working as a pair, because that's how police work often works. So they are a pair because of work, so work buddies in that sense. But then there are also, you could have an actual couple, which is also fairly common, so that the pair is a lover, like a pair of lovers, I mean. But they can still have, of course, adventures together, so no problem there. But of course, the stakes could be higher then, in some sense. Like, what does the adventure do to their relationship, for instance? Or maybe what if one finds somebody else during this adventure? Well, then there's the rookie and old warrior trope, I could even say. I think you can think of movies where that happens, that you have a young police officer and an old one, and then they are put together, and of course they don't get well together. They don't like each other at first, but then they start liking, and it's just then when they start liking each other that the warrior or the rookie dies and leaves the other one alone. And it's all tears and cries then. Or they could become a loving couple, the rookie and the old warrior, depending on the situation. Or they could morph into buddies. So what I'm saying here is that the setting with which the story starts with is not the same as where it goes. So all of these are evolving at all times of the story, unless it's a typical sitcom where things get back to their starting position at the end of each episode. But also in those, there's usually like very slow changes in the relationships of the characters. Okay, so I have probably not put all the possible pair combinations here, but so these are just a few of them. Then we have trios, where for some reason I started with the Freudian Trio. Let's see what that is about. It's not that actual in real psychology or psychiatry anymore, and but it has stuck as a kind of myth or a kind of tool for storytelling. Probably because Sigmund Freud took that from Jewish storytelling tradition originally. Also, I've heard. I'm not sure if that's true. Anyway, there's the Freudian Trio, where you have basically these were in the original theory parts of one person's mind, but you can treat them as three different people, three different characters in your story. There's the ego, which is the conscious self, or the self in general. Then there's the id, which is emotion and instinct, the dark side of the self, so to say. And then there's the super ego, like our higher self. Like super means something that is over, so over self, which is our like conscience and morals and rules part. So this could be like a combination of three different characters, like I said. Let's see what TV tropes has to say about it. About Freudian Trio. Okay. So id, ego, and super ego. So often this has also been used in what's called the power trio, where you have, well, this is from the original Star Trek, where the ego is Captain Kirk, then there we have these three. Captain Kirk, then we have the super ego as Dr. Spock, and then we have the other doctor, McCoy, who is like the emotion. And whenever Kirk has a problem on the spaceship, then he asks the advice of these two guys, and they both give answers that are typically characteristic for them, and then Kirk has to do the decision that is somehow a combination of both of these characters' advice. Yep. And the McCoy is like also a trope, and the Spock, and so on. Okay, and here are some cases where one of these is the leader, like the ego doesn't have to be the leader or the protagonist character at all. And also the protagonist doesn't have to be the leader, by the way. Anyway, so that's the Freudian Trio. Then there are other ways of thinking of the trio, like the triple god theory and the trifunctionalism. There are many kinds of triple deities, and you can read it here in the Wikipedia link. The ancient Egyptians had lots of triples of gods in their pantheon, and they loved making these different sorts of combinations. One of them is that there's the like again 3 characters. One of them is the hero who goes sometimes to the winter character or the death character, and sometimes to the life and regeneration and summer character or god, and all 3 of them have somehow godly powers. This could also be a combination of that we have two women and 1 man. That's the original triple god, I think, here. Or that we have 2 men and 1 woman. So to keep it interesting. So trios, well, a triangle has ways of staying in, like, staying put without being tipped, but it's not. But there is more dynamic than in some other combinations. But yes, the trios are very popular. There's one way of thinking about the triple deity is also to have 1 character who's very young, 1 who's middle-aged, and 1 who's old. So there's the triple goddess and also the 3 phases of Adam. Or you could just mix their genders. And then we have this like basic thing that we have the protagonist and the antagonist and 1 person in the middle. Also, although I should have probably put this middle guy in the actual middle here, so it looks better that way. Okay. Yeah, I think that works. So all of these can overlap, by the way, but that's what you probably already noticed. Then we have 4s and 5s and 7s, and there are also 6s. I don't know why I haven't put 6s here. Maybe I should. When it goes to 8s, it's becoming a little bit less easy to control, but there are also ways for that. 6s. Typically 5 plus 1. No, 3 plus 3. I did have the long math at school, but basic math still sometimes escapes me. Okay, so let's go to all fours, or actually just fours. So, of course, now we can start combining these. So we could have a four consisting of a trio plus one, or we could have two pairs. And then we can start combining these, the relationships between these characters in interesting ways. So here's one way of thinking about four characters. Like if you have a combination of four, there's this really old four temperaments psychology, which used to be also some sort of ancient way of thinking about nature, how it works, which doesn't, but it made Western science lag behind for 1,000 years or more, because people believed in this. And you can still find this in a way in popular psychology. So basically the four temperaments were the four elements, which were water, air, earth, and fire. And then the idea was that people were also, that some people were more fiery, some were more airy, and so on. That one element was more dominant in one person. And then it was somehow combined with the fluids that a person has inside them, like I think there was the air that we breathe, then there was the of course water that we have in us, like spit, and of course there was blood, and what was the fourth one? I think it was phlegm. So one who has a lot of phlegm or snot and other stuff then was a watery or phlegmatic character, like introverted but stable in some way. So you have probably seen this introvert, extrovert, stable, unstable diagram elsewhere. So it is used, but you don't see these phlegmatic, melancholic, choleric, and sanguine words anymore. So, but these can be used as character combinations. And there's not very surprisingly a TV trope about it here. So you want to write a four temperament ensemble. So maybe I'll just put the link to this article over here in the slides, because this is actually a quite good article. Yes, the Myers-Briggs Profile is one of these, where you have introvert, extrovert, sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving. You have probably made some personality test related to these. I could put this link there as well, by the way. Let's do one thing at a time. Okay. have the other link. The Myers-Briggs personalities and stories. By the way, did you talk about these things with Chris already? Am I overlapping with his teaching here? And I can't see the chat, so you have to speak out.
Yeah, we didn't talk about this.
Okay, that's good to know. Thanks. Okay. So these are ways of constructing a foursome from your characters. And then if we go to fives, there's something called a 5-people band or five-man band. So let's see what I can find about that in TV tropes. This is quite a useful place to look for these kinds of things, but you can also get too involved in these, and then it can also inhibit your own creativity if you think too much about these. I think it's 5-man band in TV tropes. Yes, the 5-man band. Okay, there's the basic combination that we have the leader, who's the protagonist, and we have the big strong guy, and the smart guy, and the lancer, who's basically the foil to the leader, and then we have the chick, who's like the emotional center of the band. And it doesn't have to be a band, and it can be like a group of adventurers, and this might work as described here, or it might not. So I don't actually agree with all of these things here, but the examples are interesting as ever. And also many of the examples don't go typically to this trope as such. So in general, I think it's better to just think about that if you have 5 characters, then these characters should be different enough from each other that your players or readers or audience can remember them, so that they don't think that, okay, who is this? Is this? I don't remember this guy. Like what? Let's see some examples. For instance, of the 5-man band, you already looked with Chris at Centaur World, so let's do that again. Centaur World characters. And yes, we have 5 of them, except that there's 6. So basically there's 5 Centaur World basic characters who are from the Centaur World. And then we have the 6 who is horse. But here we can see that the Wommerwink, I think that was her name, is the leader. That we have the silent strong guy, not as such, I think. Like this guy is strong, but he's also like very much not dumb, was he? Then we have I think we have two very emotional characters, like Julius is emotional, but what was her name? I don't remember. Anyway, they are emotional in different ways, I think. And then we have the constantly crabby character who's like annoyed at everything for some reason. Okay, and now I clicked where I didn't want to click. Yeah, and we have the outsider character who is the six in a way. Okay, and I think this character was like thief, or they just had to steal all kinds of stuff and put that stuff in their stomach. Yes, a picture of that. So all of them are memorable in a way, but although they are weird. Yes, but the gang of five is like very visible here. But it could be argued that this is actually a six character ensemble and not a five character ensemble, because on their own as these six, they were not doing anything. Like they were stuck in a way. So okay. Then we have sevens. You all remember probably Disney's version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Look at those, Seven Dwarfs. Snow White, Seven Dwarfs. Okay, and we have their names there as well. So because this is an old fairy tale, there had been illustrated versions of these seven, of the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs fairy tale before, but they all looked the same. I don't know why Doc is here twice, by the way. So they are actually 80 because of that. Anyway, in the early illustrations from the 19th century, all the dwarves looked totally identical. But then in the what Disney animators did was they thought about making every character different, and that was where the humor lay also. That after the movie we would remember every seven characters. Although this was made in the 1930s, I think, or was it early 40s? So, of course, and they were meant as cartoon characters, and so they were not very deep as such. Like many of the so-called personality was just like a physical thing, like sneezy, like what his personality was, that he was allergic to everything. So that doesn't go very deep. Also sleepy or bashful or happy. So all of these could go deeper, but they don't, and it wasn't the idea here. So maybe Grumpy and Doc were, and maybe Dopey, these three characters were a little bit deeper than the others. So they made Dopey, also the animator said later on that Dopey was made to act basically like a dog, like an animal, but he was just walking on two legs. But all his reactions were those of an animal, and he never speaks. And Doc is, of course, funny because he thinks he's the wisest and can do the best decisions, but actually he doesn't, and he isn't the wisest. And the different personalities were also visible in the way they acted and the way they were animated and how they were even walking. Like one animator, what was his name? Shane something. Anyway, those animators who were like doing this scene where they walked over the bridge, they remembered that every walk of every character was different according to their personality, and that was important, that the walk cycles were not identical. And of course here you can also see the different kinds of personalities. Okay, when you saw Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs for the first time, do you remember what your reaction was to the dwarfs? Or if you have seen this movie?
Well, at least that can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That every dwarf is defined by that one characteristic. I thought it was very clear.
Mm-hmm. So for small children, especially, this is very clear. But I think animation and feature film animation has gone a little bit, has evolved a little bit in the previous 100 years or 90 years. And now if you watch Disney or Pixar animated feature film, most of the characters go a little bit deeper than these ones. But they are still very entertaining, and entertainment was one of the main things here, as it is in all Disney animation. And by the way, that's also one of the reasons why Disney animations have become so popular, that they always go for the entertainment first. And I'm not saying this as a criticism. Just as a side thing, by the way, did you know that the original story was the dwarves were probably based on real workers in mines? Like they had you have probably heard that mines workers in the 1900s and 1700s, they were often very young, that children who were like 7 years old went to work in mines. So when they became like teenagers, those children who were working there, under the earth, they didn't have a normal puberty, but they became old before their time. So a 17-year-old might be very short, like 120 centimeters or something like that, and they might look like an old man or woman. So that's where the image of the dwarfs came. So that's the reason why the dwarfs here look old, but they are in a way childish. So that's not a very nice thing, by the way. Okay, so let's have some other combinations of 7. How many of you have seen a Japanese classic from Akira Kurosawa called Seven Samurai? So if you haven't, then you should, because it's a very good movie, and it's an interesting way of how to put 7 characters so that you can remember all of them. Then how many of you have seen this movie, A Bug's Life? Any recollection?
Yes, I've seen this.
Yes.
So this is totally based on the Seven Samurai. So the basic, although there's less death. Also, there's a movie called, a Western called The Magnificent Seven, which was directly based on the Seven Samurai, and then there was like a parody version of the Magnificent Seven. I think it was called the Seven Amigos. Anyway, I think the Bug's Life was based on the parody version, but the Seven Samurai by Kurosawa was the original of these. So it's obviously a very powerful basic situation that you have a village or community that is under threat, and then you get 7 warriors or so-called warriors to defend that community. And some of them might be good at what they do, some of them might not be good at all, and there might be 1 or 2 tricksters in the mix. The Magnificent Seven. Okay, so there's the older version of Magnificent Seven and the newer one, like from 2016, but I think the older one was from, let's see, I want to know when the original was made, 1960. Okay. And Kurosawa was, by the way, thrilled that his movie was made into a Western, because he was a great fan of Western movies, and he had made the like Seven Samurai originally by thinking of how to put the Western genre to the samurai genre. So that was his way of making a Western, by making the Seven Samurai. So now that you have heard how many like remakes and well, parodies and so on. There have been, maybe you are interested to watch the original Seven Samurai. And by the way, in the Seven Samurai, it is raining all the time, and that's not made up rain. That's not like artificial rain. When they had the production of that movie, it actually rained like for 5 weeks. Anyway, but there are these combination things that you have the Dirty Dozen and so on, or you have a combination of characters who go on a mission to do things, and maybe some of them die in the during it. Okay. There's also a science fiction version. Well, I love the title, Battle Beyond the Stars. And the poster is funny. Anyway, let's go to other sevens. Let's have the Finnish Wikipedia. Vaarojen planeetta. And have Seitsemän veljestä. So, who has read Seitsemän veljestä by Alexis Kivi? Like the Seven Brothers. No one? Well, I have actually read it a couple of times. And I think it's one of the most misunderstood novels of Finnish history, because it's actually a comedy, and it's like really funny when you start reading it. Once you get over the like old kind of Finnish language, then it's hilarious. And I don't know why people, why teachers at schools and critics have not told this to readers, or why the movie versions are so non-humoristic, because they are 7 guys who get in weird situations, and they are just so weird, these guys themselves too. Okay, but basically this is also a story of 7 characters, 7 brothers, where every one of them is different. And many of the personalities, or most of the personalities, are funny. Like, for instance, Juhani, who's the oldest one. He's 25, and that's why he thinks he's the leader. But he's actually also the dumb one, who never knows what to do. And he never notices that the real leader, the one who makes the decisions, is Aavo, who's the wisest of the brothers. Also, there are the combination of the characters is interesting. We have, like I said, Juhani, who's the oldest. Then we have twins, who are Tuomas and Aapo. So these are like a sort of pair. Then we have Simeone, who's a lone character, he's a drunk and also a madman in a way, and he's a good cook. And he's he sometimes goes into religious fervor and sees these weird goes on these trips to hell and stuff like that. So the combination is that we have Juhani, then we have Thomas and David twins, then Simeone is alone in a way. Then we have Timo and Lauri, who are also twins. And again, we have Eero, who is the youngest. So there's a combination of 1 and 2 and 3. Then we have a combination of 2 and another combination of 2. So what you get is many interesting relationships between these characters because they are all different. For instance, Eero, at the beginning he's only 17. He's clever, and also he always teases Juhani about his stupidity. And so as there's a lot of characters, then, and when the writer puts them in like a troublesome situation, then the comedy comes from how they react and how they react to each other also in that situation. So it's basically almost sitcom, although they do change. So that's how it's not quite like sitcom. And also the places change, unlike sitcom. But I'm still waiting when some Finnish film production company notices that this could be made into a brilliant comedy series, like a Western comedy or something, or put it in today. Although, as these brothers at the beginning don't know how to read, it's not quite realistic in modern day Finland. Or maybe it is, I don't know. And as you can see, there are lots and lots of other characters too. And there are songs and there are stories and fairy tales, because the brothers, when they are in those bad situations, then they start telling each other stories. So that's the time when there was no radio or television, and they didn't have any books. And some of the fairy tales that they tell are quite interesting too. Like there's a vampire tale there, and I think one other like horror genre tale. So in many ways this is an interesting book. And I took it as an example now because of those 7 characters. Okay, but before we go further, let's have a short break here because I'm thirsty. Okay, what do you say we continue at past in about 10 minutes? At 10:30.
Sounds good.
Good. See you then. Okay, let's continue. And I see I kept the recording on. I was supposed to put it on stop, but no. So there was 10 minutes of nothing in the video. Great. I'll have to edit it away. Okay, let's continue and let's go back to the slides. So before we go into the character web, I'd like to remind you that you can use the trios, for instance, in an overlapping way when you are making like an analysis of your own story or some other story. And yes, I know there's Leia twice. That was my purpose. But for instance, here there's like intersecting triangles or trios with the Star Wars characters that we have. For instance, Luke Skywalker, who has a relationship both to Han Solo and to Leia, and of course Leia has a relationship to Han Solo. So those three make a triangle, which is not what it seems. So it changes when Luke and Leia learn about each other. Then we have the relationship between Luke and Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is also not what it seems. I'm now talking about the original movies from the 1970s and 80s. So all of them, and well, it goes also for the newer ones. There are changing relationships in there all the time as well, and that's what makes Star Wars interesting in a way. Then you have been talking about character functions with the other teachers, I think. So here's just a reminder of these so-called Jungian archetypes. And then we have archetypes by story purpose. I've mentioned these, and others have mentioned these as well, that we have the protagonist and antagonist. There's the ally or sidekick or foil. We could have also the love interest. These could also overlap sometimes. We have the mentor and a guardian and a messenger, like story function archetype. And there's the Jungian trio: reason, emotion, and skeptic. Well, not the Jungian, Freudian, sorry. I'm getting mixed up with these myself, it seems. Okay, so let's go and see how to draw a character web. Like, there's no like definite right or wrong. I have learned this more or less myself, and then used a couple of books, and taking the best that I could use out of them. So usually I begin by writing the name of my protagonist first, and then I write the names of the closest people to that protagonist, to that character, and then I start drawing connecting lines between them, and arrows sometimes, like for instance here in this example, there's the protagonist whose name is B, and his friend is this Wonder Wasp. But Wanda is also an enemy, but to be, Wanda is a friend. but only Wanda knows that she's the enemy of B. So their relationship is troubled. And here I've also used different colors for the connecting lines. Then we have another friend whose name is Fake Beefy, but she's really a friend of Wanda was. Okay, so this was, by the way, drawn together with a couple of students. I think it was last year. So we thought about this sort of character combination, and I see we came up with 6 characters. And there's also 2 kinds of lines for the now and for the future. Like it seems that B and Wanda will be friends in the future, like real friends. But the principal Hornet will be B's enemy later on. Okay, and I've also written the functions of each of the characters, like the story functions, here between them. So then also the changes between the relationships as the characters learn something from each other and from something about themselves as well. Then there's also the overlapping pairs and trios that you should see. So the more the merrier. So you should not avoid these overlaps. It's what makes the story interesting. And the more you have them, the better, so that none of the characters will feel like they are there just because the story needs them to be. So that they should have their lives and goals of their own. But then there's a warning too. Like, this character web is a good tool when you have a story already, but then there might be something wrong with it, but you can't really find what it is. So then it's a good way to clarifying the story in your mind by drawing this kind of character web. But then if you use this too early on, for instance, before you start even writing the story, then it might stifle your creativity. It might take away your spontaneous reactions when you write and when you find out things. So a small warning to this. Okay, so let's stop the recording now.